The Laura Ingraham Show.
I love how people who are career public servants are criticizing Rex Tillerson because he hasn't been in career public service as a diplomat. And I would add to that, he hasn't been involved in decisions that led to the weakening of America. He's actually made decisions that have strengthened America's interest around the world by strengthening the standing of ExxonMobil as a corporate entity, American pension funds, mutual funds, most investments that are broad-based investments. We have a large investor class in this country. ExxonMobil is almost always going to be one of your blue chip stocks. He has led this company now for more than a decade and has been there since 1974, something like that. So he's been there his entire career. And he has pursued the interest of his corporation. And he has not been involved in government service. You're right, he hasn't. And with that, we can conclude that he has not been screwing it up for the U.S. government. These very people who were behind decisions that have led to America's weakened influence around the world, weakened economic standing at home, jawboning about how Tillerson's terrible. What did he do? Now, did he make decisions that deposed leaders in the Middle East that led to utter chaos in the Middle East? No. Did he lobby for kicking out Mubarak in Egypt? No. Did his decisions lead to the Coptic Christians being massacred in places like Egypt where they were protected under Mubarak? No. Did he make decisions about American spending in American regulatory matters that made it more difficult for us to stay out of debt, and that made it exceedingly more difficult for American businesses to thrive here? No, he didn't do that either. Did he greenlight operations in Iraq? No, he didn't. Did he make a decision about, let's say, going into particularly dangerous parts of Africa, as we decided back in the early 90s? What happened with, remember old Black Hawk Down? All these decisions that ended up being, bad decisions. He had nothing to do with any of those. He was helping an American corporation with global interests grow more powerful and more prosperous. And that brought a lot of prosperity to a lot of people, not just the workers of ExxonMobil. And the idea that you can't have a business dealing in Russia, what does that even mean? Now, so he would have more credibility in dealing with the difficult matters throughout Eastern Europe, Russia, and the Middle East if he had been unsuccessful in dealing with someone like Vladimir Putin. Now I would actually think the opposite. I would think if someone can't get Putin to do what he wants him to do, then I don't really want him as Secretary of State. Rex Tillerson got Putin to do what Rex Tillerson wanted him to do for ExxonMobil, which is to open up part of Russia for this, for business, for ExxonMobil. So he was persuasive in the way he dealt with Tillerson. And I will tell you, from all my experience in Russia, going back to the Soviet days, my experience living there, studying, speaking the language, being there 7 times in the last 8 years, they don't respect weakness. Putin respects strength. He's a nationalist. He's an avowed Russian nationalist. He focuses on his people and boosting his own standing among his people. He is for Mother Russia. He wants Mother Russia back. He wants Mother Russia advancing her interests, and he wants Mother Russia back. Absolutely. He wants the Russian culture to be preserved. He wants the Russian families to have more kids. He wants to beat back ISIS. He wants to beat back the Islamics the Muslims in his own region, like, of course, in Chechnya, that were doing things like taking over the school in Beslan, where we had the massacre of children there. In the theater, don't forget the theater in Russia that was stormed by the Islamic radicals as well. So we have big problems with Russia and big disagreements. They are no doubt an adversary of ours, and they have to be taken very seriously. They're not just a regional power. They have aims way beyond that. But he does not respect weakness. And remember when Obama was sitting there with it was with Medvedev. So he was sitting with Medvedev, I believe, at a forum back in 2011, 2012. And they were wrapping up a discussion. And Obama was finished. I guess he didn't think he was on mic. And you could actually hear it. It was picked up on mic. We played it I don't know how many times on this show. So Medvedev and he are leaving this event. And he says clearly to Medvedev, again, not understanding he was picked up on a mic, that essentially, he'd have more flexibility after the election. In other words, be patient with us. We'll have more flexibility after the election. Do you think the Russians respect that?
My last election, yeah. And after my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Yeah. And I transmit this information to Vladimir and let them listen.
I will transmit this information to Vladimir. I'd rather have someone who is representing America's interest and I would say very confident in that. He doesn't have to whisper to Medvedev about his true intentions. Trump goes in there and says, we're for America. We're for America's interest. We're going to make much better deals. We're not going to be anyone's patsy. We're not going to be ordered around by international organizations that don't pull their weight. We're going to live up to our obligations as we see them best representing America's interest. Versus this Obama going, well, it's my last election. We'll have more flexibility after this. Can you imagine that Medvedev going to Vladimir Putin and say, Vladimir, this Obama is stupid. He's speaking like there's not a microphone in the room. Of course, they're speaking in Russian, but you wouldn't understand it if I spoke it in Russian. See, you think that's strong? You know what I also say to old Obama and all his cronies? Where were you when we needed you in the 1980s when Andropov was president? When I lived there in 1983 and Andropov, former KGB head, was president of the Soviet Union, leader of the Soviet Union, premier, they were all about, let's get along with the Soviets. Ronald Reagan is far too bellicose. He's a warmonger. He's a warmonger because Reagan wanted peace through strength. He wanted to build up our military arsenal and make it so expensive for Russia to compete with us that the Soviet Union would ultimately collapse on its own weight. Do you think we got any help from these people back then? Now suddenly they're like, you got to be tough against Russia. What? You have zero credibility. We're going to have a much more realistic foreign policy going forward. We're not going to be rigid ideologues in how we pursue our relationships, certainly not with the former Soviet Union. We are a different country now than we were in the 1980s. We're deeply in debt, and we have now a global struggle against these jihadists who seek ruin to the West, for the West and for the United States. But we have to be very, very cautious, and we have to be very pragmatic. To me, that's what Tillerson's going to bring to this equation. But these lefties who are like, these Russian ties are very disturbing. These are the same people who are doing their peace treks to the Soviet Union in the 80s and 70s. We're going on a peace trek across the Soviet Union because we want to get to know the Soviets. They're people just like we are. 855-40-LAURA. Reaction to the Tillerson pick. We'll talk about that a little bit more. and the climate change skeptics that are going to be filling out the EPA. That puts a big smile on my face. I'm happy about that. And a lot more. 855-40-LAURA. We're going to be joined by Senator Rand Paul, who, remember, was fairly vicious in his criticism of Donald Trump. And now we'll get a first reaction from him for this Secretary of State pick. I have a feeling he's going to like Tillerson. That's my sense. And later on, we talk to John Fund. He has an interesting perspective on how Trump is free to make decisions outside of the ideological gridlock that we found ourselves in over the last couple of decades, and what this will mean for the future of the GOP and perhaps reimagining politics in the United States completely. We have a lot to get to. And also, remember, Food for the Poor. We have our $10,000 challenge. 3 people who give $10,000 to Food for the Poor will be able to host an hour of this show in January with me. I'll be there, but you get to host an hour of this show. So even if you can't afford it and give to this great cause, you might know someone who can, and won't this be a fun hour? So all you need to do is call us at 855-40-LAURA, and we'll get you going on that. But 3 lucky people are going to get a chance to co-host the show with me. 855-40-LAURA. Food for the Poor are wonderful partners in charity and philanthropy for those most in need this Christmas season. Don't go away. This CIA assessment on Russia hacking. The overseers of the U.S. intel community have not embraced the CIA assessment that Russian cyber attacks were aimed at helping some Russian favorite, Republican President-elect Donald Trump, win the 2016 election. While the Office of the DNI does not dispute the CIA's overall analysis of Russia's hacking operations, it also hasn't endorsed their assessment because of a lack of conclusive evidence that Moscow intended to boost Trump over his opponent, Hillary Clinton. The position of the DNI, which oversees 17 agency-strong U.S. intel community, could give Trump fresh ammo to dispute the CIA assessment. This is a funny thing. This is just a wild, funny thing. Let's go to Alberto in Georgia on line 1. Alberto, do you have your therapy dog?
Hi, Laura.
Do you have your therapy dog and your blanket and your warm cocoa to... Any concerns you have should be ameliorated by these comfort items that should be subsidized by the federal government, by the way. Go ahead. I'm just teasing.
Hi, Laura. No, I voted for Trump, though, and I got my dogs, but they're rescue dogs. I got no therapy dogs.
Excellent.
Hey, 2 points. Yeah, 2 points here. Well, I'm a little discouraged about Trump's weakening his stance on the deportation of aliens, illegal aliens. I'm really, really encouraged by this appointment for the State Department because we really need an outsider on 2 accounts. Number one, this guy does have foreign, not policy experience, but foreign affairs experience because he's been dealing with all these foreign nations on the interest of American company. Number one. Number 2, and I think most importantly, this guy is the CEO of an American company, and I think he's probably going to be able to get a handle on the humongous bureaucracy of the State Department. I haven't heard about that yet, but I really
exactly. That's a great point. The State Department is one big bureaucratic tangle. Remember after Benghazi, we started learning about the layer upon layer upon layer of bureaucracy. When those poor people in Benghazi, they needed extra security, and there was a call for review to extra security for them because of all the attempted attacks on the compound in Benghazi and attempted hits on that compound. And you can't get an answer. You can't cut through the bureaucracy to get a common sense, decent, some type of decent response time because the bureaucracy is so bad. I'm telling you, through these departments, you should take it's a hatchet, not a scalpel, and you could cut, in most of these departments, you could cut 2/3 of the workers. I'm not joking. 2/3 of the workers could be cut. My time at transportation, my time at the Department of Education, just my experience in those 2 huge bureaucracies, you could easily cut 2/3, probably more. You know what they should start off? If you're not one of the employees who has to show up during a snowstorm because you're non-essential, you should be cut. That's a good way of doing it. Rand Paul up next.
855-40-LAURA. 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 855
Well, I have one of the Ovation. Yeah, get that. Okay, right to Eli. We want the Ovation gift set, and we're going to send it over to Jennifer. Every time she writes about me, she says, anti-immigrant radio host. It's like, wait a second, I actually have 3 immigrants living in my household that happen to be my children. Anti-immigrant radio host. Oh, my God, it's so tiresome. Joining us now, one of my absolute favorites, Senator Rand Paul, in the great state of Kentucky, who is never annoyed by Christmas music being played in places where he shops generously for his family. Hey, Senator Paul, good to talk to you.
Merry Christmas, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of hyperbole out there among it's mostly people on the left, and it's interesting, especially about Tillerson. I can't wait to hear your viewpoint. So many of these folks were all too happy to work with the Soviets in the 80s and 70s, and we're all upset about Reagan and the Strategic Defense Initiative and building up our military back then, and now suddenly they're all a bunch of Russophobes.
Yeah. You know, I think what people so simplify things that they make it sound as if there is no nuance to anything. What I want to hear from Tillerson is, does he understand the world? Does he understand the Iraq War made us, less safe in the Middle East? Does he understand that Russia is sometimes our friend, sometimes our foe, but certainly one that we look with a wary eye, but not someone we wish to encourage to have, an altercation. We spent 70 years doing a dance with the Russians. No, never saying that we thought that they were, Bill of Rights champions, but also acknowledging that we didn't want to have a world war with them. And that is sort of the realist point of view. And I hope that's one that Tillerson takes. But, we'll find that out over time. But just because he did business in Russia doesn't mean he's an ally of Putin.
One of the things that I have said repeatedly, Senator Paul, is it would frankly concern me more if he wasn't able to convince Vladimir Putin that opening up a particular part of the Russian, landscape or marketplace to a large American business interest with global reach, if he hadn't been able to do that, I would say, well, what good is he going to be in negotiating some of these things? He fails across the board in the way he uses his persuasive powers. But at least he's actually gotten these foreign leaders to do business in a way that generally has helped the shareholders and the pension funds and the mutual funds held by millions of Americans.
To my mind, it's most important that we sort of observe the history, learn from our history, particularly in the Middle East, that regime change hasn't worked for us because we still have people advocating for regime change in Syria. You have John Bolton, who is considered for the second job at the Secretary of State, advocating for regime change in Syria, advocating for regime change in Iran as well, as if it would be a walk in the park and tomorrow Iran would be just fine. So I think we do have to think about who we want in these positions and what their worldview is, because regime change really in Libya and Syria has not been our friend. In Iraq, it has not been our friend. It has not made us safe.
Well, Trump certainly agrees with you on that. I mean, everything he said during the campaign about the Iraq War. I mean, he's a Republican president-elect who argued against the Iraq War, and I know you did as well. But he was able to win in arguing against the Bush era, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and Donald Trump gave a speech as recently as about a week or two ago saying the same thing. If we want to rebuild our nation here, if we want to rebuild the infrastructure of America, we can't be rebuilding, the infrastructure of Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these far-flung places. So I think Donald Trump really has said this over and over again, so I think it's deeply held. That's just why I hope he doesn't have somebody running the State Department who is diametrically opposed to everything that he stated that he is for. I don't know about Tillerson, but I would call, John Bolton basically unrepentant about the Iraq War and about regime change, and so I just hope he does better than that.
We're talking to Senator Rand Paul here on the Laura Ingraham Show. What cabinet pick thus far gives you the most concern? There are different people. I mean, everyone from who he picked at the Commerce Department, Wilbur Ross, to, of course, Mattis at the Defense Department, General Kelly. Who gives you concern, if any of them?
I'd rather start on the opposite side. Who am I most excited about?
Okay, let's do that, and then we can go to the other question. All right.
Scott Pruitt at EPA is better than any of the Bush appointees, both presidents, and probably better than any of Reagan appointments. I believe that, because Scott Pruitt is young, he's active, he's intellectual, and he realizes that the pendulum of regulations has swung so hard against American jobs that I think he will, with Donald Trump's blessing, I think really start to repeal the regulatory war on American jobs. And I think within months, we can start to see some rejuvenation of American jobs and companies staying here. Because, when you talk about a company like Carrier or any of these other countries, if we can get rid of the regulatory burden that adds cost to their product, and a lot of this can be done by reversing Obama's executive orders. There are hundreds of executive orders that Obama has done to kill American jobs. I think Scott Pruitt and Donald Trump will be part of unraveling that.
Oh, the Democrats are just in an absolute panic about Pruitt. Of course, former Attorney General of Oklahoma. And can they stop him, do you think? Is there a way to stop Pruitt, given the Harry Reid change to the rules? You only need 51, correct, to approve an appointment?
Harry Reid, I think, has made it much easier for Donald Trump to get his appointments through, and so I guess we can thank Senator Reid on the way out for that. But I do think that I think Pruitt passes. Whether or not it's a party line vote, I don't know. There's a possibility it is. But I really appreciate Trump having the courage to appoint somebody who's going to undo the regulatory war on our jobs. I mean, in my state, we've lost nearly 20,000 jobs in the coal industry because of the war on coal. I want to see those people getting their jobs back. And I think if we can stop the regulatory war, there is a chance that the coal industry can turn around and we can start getting some of those jobs back.
What about what's his name? Prudence, or how do you say his name? Puzner at the Labor Department.
The Secretary of Labor.
Yeah.
I've met him once, don't know him well, but I have read his writings, and I think he has a real understanding of what makes business tick in our country. And once again, we just have to realize that you got to get that first job, and if we regulate that first job away, if we say that you have
for American citizens, I would imagine,
first job,
yeah.
You'll never get your first job if we regulate away that opening wage. And so I think he's good on that. And I think he'll be good. I think he's a good pick. I think he's a good, solid guy who understands business. There
was some concern about his view on mass migration into the United States, immigration, foreign workers, especially for low-wage, first-time job seekers in the United States, that he was a big proponent of that. And so that certainly gives pause to some of us who believe that the mass crush of more indigent people into the United States is not what we need.
I think enforcement of the border security, though, really won't come out of labor. I think that's going to be more out of justice as well as Homeland Security. And I do think that there are a couple of things Donald Trump has always said, always been consistent on, and I think you can tell that he truly believes. One is border security, and two is the whole idea that regime change in the Middle East has not made us safer. He says them in every speech, and I think he will. I think he will enforce border security. Some of enforcement is showing from the get-go that you have a zero tolerance, because once you have a zero tolerance for people coming in illegally, it'll stop. But we've never had that.
No,
we've never had a Republican president or a Democrat president who actually believes in zero tolerance.
Is there a concern that you have now about the Democrats refusing to accept this election result, where initially it was the Electoral College has to be changed. Then it was Comey's initial letter or follow-up letter to the Senate is part of the reason that this went for Trump. And then it was Russia hacking is the reason. It just seems there's always another thing that they're pushing to try to delegitimize Trump's victory. And, of course, the fake news argument as well.
So, Laura, you're trying to tell me that Hillary Clinton could have had something to do with her loss, and it wasn't the Russians?
Exactly.
Look, in my state, 70% of Eastern Kentucky voted for Donald Trump, maybe over 70% in some of my counties. And the reason they did so had nothing to do with the Russians. It had everything to do with them losing their jobs and with the, I think, correct perception that President Obama didn't care about them, that Hillary Clinton didn't care about them or their jobs. And really, this was widespread. It wasn't just in coal country. It was all across the Midwest where people have been losing jobs decade after decade. The Democrats, I think, have been shown to be, left-leaning elitists from both coasts that don't really care about Midwesterners and their jobs. And those people came out and said, you know what, we want someone who actually cares about American jobs. And I think it was an overwhelming sea shift, and so we'll see. But I really think that these people trying to play it off as somehow the Russians are to blame instead of Hillary Clinton's policies, I don't think it's going to go very far.
Both McConnell and Ryan, Senate Majority Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan, back the CIA probe after this leak came out of the CIA, although it hasn't been confirmed or validated by the DNI, which manages all 17 intelligence agencies, but they offered strong support for the intelligence community this week, which is being reported as in sharp contrast to what the president-elect has said. Is that the right way to go for McConnell and Ryan?
I don't know about what they're saying, but I do know that James Clapper has sort of a tainted history. He was found to be lying to Congress. He said there was no bulk collection of data, and then Edward Snowden's revelation said, guess what, there were bulk collections of data. So he actually lied directly to a Senate committee on this, and so I think there is some question that goes to his credibility. I think the intelligence community thinks, and people believe, that somebody got into the emails because it did happen,
right.
But I don't think anybody knows for certain who did it. And I think for some people this is a political question. It's a blame game to try to take blame away from Hillary Clinton for the crushing defeat. But what I would say is, sure, we ought to investigate. I mean, we need to know who's looking into our stuff, whether it's into the Democratic National Committee or government computers. We have to protect ourselves. But I think it's going on more than people think. All the countries that have the ability to do cyber invasion of other computers apparently are doing it, including our country that was listening to the phone calls of Angela Merkel. So I think that nobody's sort of completely blame-free here. But I don't know if we can get every country to stop doing it, but what we have to do is protect our data so they can't invade our sensitive, secure, and classified data.
Can you give us some sense of the Rand Paul family Christmas tradition? Give us some of your family traditions. We want to live in your holiday habitat for a moment.
Well, there'll often be a backyard football game if it's warm enough. We go to Texas and visit with my family down there. Thanksgiving we do in Kentucky, and then a lot of times for Christmas we go to Texas. Mm-hmm. So backyard football might be part of it. There'll probably be a board game, with capitalism fighting socialism on the table. So, capitalism tends to win in the Paul household every time. I don't know what happens, but
Shocker.
Yeah.
What do you play, Risk, or what do you play? Monopoly? What do you play?
Yeah, really. Yeah. I'm just really making that up completely large just for your entertainment. But,
I want to see you play football. I want to see Rand Paul play football. That's something I want to see.
We do some backyard football, and I won't say that there are any great athletic trophies going around for the skill level, but we have fun doing it.
Well, you have a wonderful Christmas. You and your entire family. Say hi to your dad for us, and Merry Christmas, Senator Paul. We appreciate your service to this country.
Will do. Merry Christmas, Laura.
All right, we'll take a break. Don't go away. Kanye West leaves the hospital to meet with Donald Trump today. All right, we have a lot to get to. The president, outgoing, thank the Lord, outgoing is kind of starting, he's finishing it, I should say, the way he started it. Well, the way he started his political career and public speaking, going back to watching some of his early addresses. I was watching something from the Cambridge Public Library. I believe this is in Massachusetts. September 20th, 1995. And this talk he gave actually aired on Channel 37 in the municipal TV station there. And he was speaking about, race and racial concerns in the United States back then. And then I think he really rose to fame, though, in that 2004 convention speech where he said there's no red state, blue state, black or white, gay or straight. We're the United States of America, which was actually, I love that sentiment. It was getting beyond the hyphenation, presumably that's what he meant back then, to being more united as a country, focusing on America and renewing the country. And I think that really was music to the ears of a lot of folks. They might have thought, well, he's kind of a liberal guy, but that was a breakthrough moment for him. Then, as time went on, he kind of veered back to the traditional liberal point of view, which is that you are probably going to be faced with such racial bias in the United States that without government intervention, you won't be able to overcome it. That most minorities today need an aggressive government approach, either from the Justice Department or from Civil Rights Commission or in government contracting or in affirmative action at schools. You need that today. Otherwise, there won't be that type of success in minority communities that everyone hopes for. Again, that the government can solve every societal ill beyond just outlawing discrimination based on race, doing affirmative things that level the playing field, or in fact, if necessary, punish people who might not have done anything personally to African Americans or Hispanic Americans, but who are part of the old way and came out of the old way of doing business in the country, which was based on racial favoritism and so forth. He really is still mired in that. He'll throw in words and phrases like, "Yeah, we've seen progress, and sometimes it's been extraordinary, but this is still the yoke around the collective population," and that this is something that we have to always be reminding people of.
There have been very few instances where I've said, "Well, that was racist. You are racist." There have been times where I've said, you might not have taken into account the ongoing legacy of racism in why we have so many black men incarcerated. Now, some might say, well, you're not speaking fully truth to power because of that diplomacy.
Yes.
But I don't think that trying to appeal to the better angels of our nature, as Lincoln put it, is somehow compromise.
So he's saying to those who wanted him to be more forceful on race that he had to have a different approach because he was president. Does this mean after the presidency he's going to go back to the old community organizing, Reverend Wright church of speaking, the style of speaking? Remember, this is a guy who is tutored by Bill Ayers and who sat in Reverend Wright's church all those years, and who came from a family that were avowed atheists. His father was Muslim, but his mother was avowed atheist, and Marxist understanding of the world, and cut his teeth in college as an activist, and went on to be a community activist, a lecturer at the University of Chicago, not a full professor. Don't call him a professor. And then went right into politics. So Obama's speaking about what's holding African Americans back still, and very, very little of the personal responsibility comes into play. And there are moments in his presidency where he has addressed the responsibility of people to take care of their families and to abide by the rule of law. I mean, and we've praised him the times he's done that. His My Brother's Keeper initiative was pretty good, and I think he had an opportunity to build on that. But then he lurches back to the old way of speaking.
The challenge we face today when it comes to race is rarely the overt Klansman style racism, and typically has more to do with the fact that people got other stuff they want to talk about, and it's sort of uncomfortable, and it's somebody not getting called back for an interview, although it's never explicit, or it's who gets the TV acting job, the actress who doesn't quite look the part.
Sleep like a baby. See, that's something I can never do in his house. Never. Doesn't matter how tired I get, I still have to watch myself. I have to be vigilant for my own survival.
Oh, that's from that 1995 speech. I think I've said this all along, that I think Barack Obama should go into voiceover work. Or maybe he wants to be an actor himself. Why doesn't he could be the new Denzel Washington in Hollywood. Isn't it pretty good? He has a great voice. He does good voices. He puts on that kind of fake accent when he wants to. He does Pakistan, Nicaragua, and he puts on that accent. I mean, there's a career for him out there, and he wants to break the barrier of inclusion in Hollywood. Then he can do it. I still don't understand why Kanye West is at the. Maybe Trump just wants to check on him, make sure he's okay. Maybe there's some type of intervention. Maybe he'll be the White House czar for hip hop and rap. Maybe he's not giving him marital advice with Kim Kardashian. Oh, come on, you guys are ridiculous. Maybe just coming in to say hi. Didn't Kanye West just trash Trump? What did he say about Trump? I can't speak and search at the same time, but what did he say about Trump? It was nasty stuff. He was nasty about Trump, I believe. I think the Kardashians tend to be more Republican. But I don't think they were very pro-Trump now. Look, Romney wasn't either, and Romney's, had a lovely dinner. What was that call like when he had to call Romney and say, well, I'm not picking you? Well, we know someone finally got a rose, and it was Tillerson. Jim in Illinois, line 5. Jim.
Obama has always been good at shrouding his attitudes and his real beliefs in mystery. He has always had the racial undertones and attitude that, it's called the liberation theology thing. But he's such a great actor, as you said, when it comes to hiding what he really thinks and how he really feels. But the true Barack Obama is definitely Afrocentrist and really does have a chip on his shoulder against anybody who's not Afrocentrist.
Well, that's kind of the Reverend Wright view of the world. That's what you're saying. He never really left. I think he never really left the college campus activist setting, and he never really left the Church of Reverend Wright.
Black people have a reason to hate. That's just how it is.
Okay, we've been listening to this Obama 1990. Put that up on Facebook, Drew, so people can watch this. Well, he also has that smoker's delivery, that smoker's voice, which is it's a better sounding voice. Frank Sinatra's voice got better as he got older. He left that Bing Crosby kind of crooner style, really smooth, to be the more, the Sinatra at the Sands, which was much smokier, had a up tempo, but it had that smoky delivery. Oh, just made. Well, that's some of the great singers over the last 70 years in America were smokers. Their voice just sounds better usually. Not the opera singers, no, but I'm just talking about the, swing sound and jazz from Ella Fitzgerald to Sarah Vaughan to Sinatra, Dean Martin, of course, Tony Bennett. Well, they were all smokers. Everyone smoked back then. Let's go to John in Virginia, line 5. Johnny, go
Laura, ahead. as I watch the one more unhinged than the previous reaction of the left these last several weeks, and it makes it very stark to me that when this election, we were literally teetering on the abyss, our republic, in this election, and it terrifies me to think what would have happened if we've lost. But we didn't lose because of you and several other people. And this Christmas season, the thing I'm giving thanks most for are you and a couple other prominent national people who had the incredible courage and spine to stand up. And for my money, in the next Mount Rushmore, you're on it. The next wave of founding fathers. And on behalf of myself and my family, my children, my unborn grandchildren, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I can only imagine, absent you and a few other people, the republic would have perished.
Oh, that's
hyperbole at all.
Oh, well, John, I'm blushing. That is very, very kind of you, and it was definitely a joint effort. And there was a team effort, and obviously the man himself, Donald Trump, stuck with it and pushed through the media assault on him day after day, and went by his own gut and instinct. And it was a rough ride. And I lost a lot of opportunities supporting Donald Trump. Speaking engagements, maybe lost some friends too along the way. But not close friends, but people who were acquaintances. And I say it feels good to be right. We're gonna, we're going to be pushing for the ideas and the issues that we care about, but we had to save that Supreme Court. We could not let the Supreme Court go down. And when everybody was panicking and the Never Trumpers came out with their Never Trump issue of National Review and the hyperbole on the old establishment right and the neoconservatives, it didn't bother me. I mean, did I ever get bothered once, Drew, I was amused by it, but it never bothered us.
No, you took it the right way.
No,
we brushed it off.
Yeah, we knew what
spitballs off a battleship,
right,
as you say.
Spitballs off a battleship. Got to keep it aimed at the horizon. We got to go to the right spot in the end. Get to the right spot. But you're very kind, and have a Merry Christmas. I really appreciate that. Let's go to Jennifer in Florida on line 2. I'm going a little long in this segment. Jennifer, go ahead, my friend.
Yes, do you think that the Quislings that are undermining Trump with this Russia meme and stuff really want war and maybe even regime change in Moscow?
No, I don't think they really want war. I just think they're desperate to undermine Trump because they know what's happening here. Trump's going to grow this movement. Trump's going to grow the movement among African Americans and among Latinos and other minority groups that have been, sadly, for far too long, buying into the liberal idea that there is a government solution for every problem. He's going to show them that it's not. This doesn't have to be this way. That terrifies them. Can you imagine if Trump, Jennifer, wins 10 to 15% more of the African American vote in the next election cycle? It's over for forget it. If he's able to grow this movement by showing more people across a broader spectrum that the free market, as run efficiently, will bring more peace and prosperity to more families. If he's able to do that, and I think he can, what do the Democrats do then? Still blame Russia? So they're out of ideas, and this is the only thing they have. This is the only snowball left in their fort. By the way, Jennifer, have you ever seen those fake snowballs that you can throw inside? They're kind of styrofoam, squishy things. Have you seen those? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh, my gosh, they're so much fun.
No, I haven't.
Okay, you should go online and buy some. Okay, we were throwing them around the LifeSet studio yesterday, and I was throwing it at our video team, and they don't hurt, and you can whip them really hard. And I pride myself on my fastball. I'm a pretty good overhand thrower. And it's a wicked fun to play. Wicked fun. I'm going back to my New England. It's wicked fun to play, and it gets out your frustrations on the inside. It's like one of those clowns, when you were a kid, and those clowns you could punch and they would never tip over. It's kind of like the modern day Christmas version of that. You can just throw it hard and nothing gets damaged. I don't know why I felt the need to tell you that, but if you're frustrated by the left, you can get those fake snowballs. All right, we'll take a break. 855-40-LAURA. The Russophobes on the left are really just their phobia really is Trump winning. That's the phobia that they're really suffering from. Don't go away. Greggy, welcome.
Laura, first of all, I want to congratulate you and thank you for the most inspirational speech at the RNC.
Oh, thanks so much. That's so nice of you. Thank you.
But the reason I called is Barack Obama has sat in the most unique position of any president when it comes to helping our African Americans improve their economic plight in this country, and he did nothing but rely on the old argument of racism as to why they're not participating in the economy. Now, no matter what Trump does with his policies, if they don't take on personal responsibility and self-improvement in education and develop a skill, they're not going to participate no matter what Trump does.
Right, no one's going to give you anything. I think that's right. Our staff is obsessed with watching this 1995 Obama speech. You guys, focus on your work. Stop watching these old Obama videos.
Before you came in, she told me the fellow was black. That's the real reason why she's bothered, and I just don't think that's right.
The most successful CEO probably the last 30 years in the United States is Rex Tillerson. Other of the most successful investors, especially in depleted industries and industries under stress like Wilbur Ross, these are all just a bunch of ignoramuses? Oh, okay. Okay, Jennifer. We need more bloggers in the cabinet. That's what we need. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by John Fund. He's going to stop in. Of course, you read his stuff in National Review, also the Journal. Harrison in Florida. Got to get to this comment, and I think Fund will have an interesting follow-up on this. You worked, Harrison, as a linguist a Russian linguist for the U.S. government for many years. And давайте, скажи мне. Tell me about what you learned. Скажите мне, пожалуйста. Очень хорошо. Молодец. Okay, tell us what we need to know, and then we won't bore anyone else with our Russian. Go ahead.
Well, this was in my 20s. I'm now an old dude.
Yeah.
But what I saw happen, I was over in Berlin monitoring Soviet aircraft and so forth, and I saw people collecting intelligence and going in. After that, I worked at NSA.
Mm-hmm.
I saw intelligence coming in, and guys were faking the intelligence they were sending so they could get a promotion. And I thought, how in the world can the president make a decision based on this crummy knowledge that's being sent to them?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to let you know that if anybody doesn't know that's happening, I could tell you it does. And how can they possibly know the Russians hacked this thing? All right, so.
Well, if Hillary, I can tell you this, Harrison, I can tell you this. If Hillary had won, we wouldn't be worried about the Russian involvement, right? It would have.
Well, we have another reason not to worry about the Russians. If Putin really wanted to help himself, he would have Hillary get elected, because with Trump getting elected, what's going to happen is he's going to open up the pipelines, it's going to drive the cost of oil down, and it's going to bankrupt the Soviet Union. They are going to need us.
You're still saying Sovietsky Soyuz. I love that. All right, you never left the Soviet Union. I still say Soviet Union as well. It just trips off my tongue. But don't you love all the former naysayers of Reagan's peace through strength approach to the Soviets and the mutually assured destruction, all of it, and SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, they were blasting away at Ronald Reagan as a warmonger, and today all these people are Russophobes. You can't make up how stupid this is. It's so transparent what they're doing. They don't care about Russia. They care about delegitimizing Donald Trump's victory. Спасибо большое, Harrison. We really appreciate it. And I hope your Russian's not rusty. You still speak it every now and then?
Yeah, I do. But I need to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you what I want to tell you on the air.
Oh.
If there's a way for you to call me or for me to call you, I have something to tell you that'll blow your mind.
Okay, all right. But I get that a lot, by the way. So, okay, and if it involves numerology, then I can't be part of that. But we'll take that under advisement. Drew's like, waving. No. I appreciate that. Anytime someone says that, I start getting a little nervous. Okay. John Fund is joining us now, and of course, a national affairs columnist for the National Review Online, senior editor at the American Spectator. And when I say hi to John, he usually says greetings. Hi, John.
Laura, felicitations, greetings, and it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Oh, Merry Christmas, John. Let's talk about this funny scenario where we have the old no nukes crowd all upset. They were all rocking out to Jackson Browne at the No Nukes concerts in the 80s, and now they're looking for a commie under every bed. I mean, it's quite something, don't you think?
The intelligence sources, which remain unnamed, that think that the Russians were deliberately trying to elect Donald Trump, are on one side. But we know what intelligence sources told us before the election, which was that 4 or 5 countries probably had hacked into Hillary Clinton's private server and gotten her emails, the ones that she tried to bleach bit. Well, if that's the case, if our intelligence sources are right about that, none of those emails were released before the election, Laura. So Vladimir Putin was obviously holding on to them, hoping Hillary would get elected, making Hillary a potential blackmail victim.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know one thing from the WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks didn't release a single email from Hillary except towards the very end, where suddenly this innocuous thing about a radio talk show host, not you, was released, and it came from her private server. I think that was a signal from Russians saying, we have your emails. We're not releasing them, but with this one email, we're proving that we have it. So forget about delegitimizing Donald Trump. I think we dodged a potential blackmail bullet if Hillary Clinton had been elected president, because the Russians have her emails.
Don't you want to know what else is in those emails? I'm still very curious. My Christmas curiosity is peaked.
Enough to prove that the Clinton Foundation was probably the greatest criminal conspiracy unknown to man, run by modern-day Bonnie and Clyde.
What about Trump, saying that we're going to move beyond the Clinton investigation and so forth? Was that smart to do, turn the page, or does it cut against his narrative that the rule of law shall apply across the board regardless of your name or where you came from or how much money you have?
Well, Laura, if he was laying down an olive branch, I think the olive branch has just been stomped on the last few days, don't you think?
Yeah, with a recount and the casting aspersions on the election, et cetera.
I think if Trump were thinking the following, it would have been a smart move. You know, the Clinton Foundation violated charity laws in all 50 states because, you remember, charities have to not only comply with federal law but with state law. I think there's a whole bunch of Republican state attorneys general who I think should go into and subpoena the Clinton Foundation and find out just how much they were breaking the law. Because what the WikiLeaks show is, they basically show that the Clinton Foundation was confessing that they were breaking laws in all 50 states, not properly putting money aside, using improper solicitation techniques. I mean, it's unbelievable. So forget what the feds do. I think the state should start investigating the Clinton Foundation.
Well, and remember the New York Attorney General opened up the...
Oh, he went after the Trump Foundation. Right. Exactly.
Right. And now they can't operate in New York.
Go after the Trump Foundation, but don't ignore the Clinton Foundation, which is 500 times bigger.
What is it doing now? Is it still operating? Is it raising money? I mean, I know Australia's not giving them any more money.
Suddenly donations after November 8th took a dramatic turn downward, Laura. I don't know why. Why do you think?
Well, it's funny. And not that it bought access or anything or set up meetings with Hillary in anticipation of her big victory. What do you think about the Rick Perry selection at the Energy Department that he once vowed to abolish? Remember when he had that brain freeze and he couldn't remember the departments he wanted to abolish? I guess that was one of them. Now he's heading the department.
Well, just remember, the Energy Department doesn't have a lot to do with energy. That's actually, a lot of that comes from the Interior Department, which has a lot of energy on public lands. But to the extent the Energy Department has stood in the way of energy independence, which we now have because of fracking, it's been a problem and it should be abolished. But Rick Perry's from Texas. He knows energy. He also is a former Air Force guy. He's a good person to be in charge of our national labs and the stewardship of our nuclear weapons. So I think he's an excellent choice, and what a great spokesman for energy, because Texas is all about energy, and that's going to be one of the biggest American exports the next few years, energy.
Right, and one of the preeminent creators of jobs, and good-paying jobs for everything from fracking to other exploration, the technology that goes into new discovery of oil and gas fields, so 100%. Well, the news came in today, I guess, that the Clinton campaign is in favor of the electors who meet next week to officially elect Donald Trump to ensure that they get an intelligence briefing on the alleged Russian hacking of the election in the United States. And Podesta has indicated that he's in favor of this intel briefing, and they're pushing for it. What do we make of this?
I think we should see them and raise them. Here's what I think the Hillary electors should have. They should have a private briefing from the FBI into all of the evidence that they had on Hillary and her dereliction of duty regarding national security and what was probably in those emails that were deleted that the FBI was able to recover. I think they should have a full briefing on exactly how Hillary Clinton endangered our national security. And then they can have a Trump briefing on whatever the Russian hackers did. I don't think the Hillary people want to have that briefing. I think they'll go quiet if it's tit for tat.
So it has to be a one-sided briefing for them. There could be nothing that casts any aspersions on Hillary's influence peddling.
If they want the Trump electors to have a briefing, let's have the Hillary electors have a briefing. They vote too.
Mm-hmm. The whole thing is just ridiculous. I mean, first they wanted to get rid of the Electoral College, then they blame Fox and talk radio, fake news. They blame that. And now it's the Russians are coming.
Laura, the only people they don't blame is their liberal ideology, which was so ridiculous, went off the rails with political correctness that the American people in the heartland had a revolt. The only thing they won't do is look in the mirror. That's the one thing we can guarantee.
Yeah, and they obviously never will. Okay, what are you doing for Christmas, John? Any favorite Christmas activities, outings, music, traditions? Give us something. We're trying to get into everybody's holiday habitat.
I have relatives in Germany and Switzerland. I'm going to the Christmas markets in Nuremberg, which are the best in the world.
Oh, nice. What do you buy there? Is it foods or is it
Everything from religious icons to gingerbread to little dollhouses for nieces and nephews, you name it.
Oh, that's awesome. I hope they're not made in China. I hope they're locally made or made in the Holy Land.
No. These are little elves in the Black Forest.
Okay. You can't say Black Forest. That's very intolerant of you. It has to be
remember, we had an
neutral
election about political correctness and it lost. So we can now take back the language.
Oh, okay.
Bit by bit, word by word.
Excellent. Pronouns can go back to he and she, except on college campuses. We can use manhole cover again. Before it was personhole cover. So there are all sorts of victories in this election.
Our New Year's resolution should be to take back our language, Laura. One word a day, 365 days a year. We take back one word and are able to say it and use it without being guilty.
I hear. I'm bringing back the word hobo and bum. Those are the words I'm bringing back. Hobo and bum to replace homeless.
Have a contest with your listeners. What words they want to bring back.
What words we want to... Okay. That's a great idea. Okay, just keep giving me great ideas, and I'll keep putting them into action. John Fund, have a Merry Christmas. That sounds like a lovely tradition. And best to your family.
Merry Christmas, and God bless.
God bless, and we'll talk to you in the new year. Thanks so much. That's a great idea. The one word a day, bring back to the English language. Take it all back. Former police officer. Jerry, go ahead.
How you doing, Laura? Listen,
great.
You saved me from... I was suffering from Glenn Beck depression syndrome. And 6 months ago, I got off of that, and I found you on the radio, and I said, "This is wonderful."
Awesome.
Yes, I've been listening to you on and off for quite a while, but you're not on XM anymore. Is that correct?
No, I'm on traditional radio. But go ahead and your comment. What's your comment?
No, I was listening to, and I hear this a lot from Obama, where he speaks about mass incarceration of African Americans. And really, that's what he's trying to say is the police are racist and they're arresting African Americans for absolutely no reason. And nobody ever calls him on this. It's ridiculous. The reason there's mass incarceration of African Americans is because they commit crimes. The police aren't just picking up people off the street because they're black and putting them in prison. It's crazy, and nobody ever calls them on it.
Well, I guess we just should have fewer crimes. That's another thing. Crimes aren't crimes. And you go back and listen to a lot of what Reverend Wright said and early musings of Barack Obama. It's focused, a lot of it's focused on the systemic bias in American society, whether it's in law enforcement or even his references yesterday or the day before to Hollywood discriminating against black actors. It's systemic. It's just part of who we are. It's still a racist country.